How's it going, friends? It's been a crazy day. The globalist Prime Minister of Belgium, Alexander De Croo, just announced he's stepping down due to his party's poor performance in Belgian regional and European Union elections today. Now, that could mean that Belgium could soon have an early snap election. This comes on the heels of Emmanuel Macron stepping down in France and calling for an early French snap election, which came on the heels of Rishi Sunak stepping down in Great Britain and calling for early elections there. So we're just seeing bam, 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 every single day, major world events taking place. You can't even keep up with it all. Now, I'm very happy with the election results in Flanders. They could finally get a real nationalist government in Flanders. We'll see what happens. I'll make a video about it later. There's so many different countries to talk about. In this video, I'm going to talk about Germany and Austria. I'm putting them together to compare and contrast the relationship between each country's conservative party and each country's establishment center-right party. So in Germany, Alternative für Deutschland, the AfD, according to exit polls, they got about 16% of the vote nationwide, which makes them the second most popular party in Germany after the Christian Democrats, the CDU. Now, in the former states of Eastern Germany, they're number one. Exit polls show they got 27% and were number one by a big margin. And the number three party in East Germany is this new Die Linke splinter group, which the media is calling anti-immigration. It's not actually that anti-immigration, but the media portrays it as such, and some people undoubtedly voted for it for that reason. At any rate, nationwide exit polls show about 20% of German men voted for the AfD, 13% of German women. However, among the youngest age groups, the AfD did the best and they did the worst among the elderly. The CDU's core base is the elderly. Among 70 and older, almost half of all Germans voted CDU. The big bombshell I saw is that this major exit poll said 34% of blue-collar voters in Germany voted for the AfD. First place by a gigantic margin, which makes the AfD the most authentic working-class party in Germany. So you have this party that's being massively demonized, persecuted, intimidated, and yet it's most popular among young working-class men. So the AfD is a relatively new party. It basically advocates the exact same things that the Christian Democrats were advocating in the early 2000s. Angela Merkel took the Christian Democrats way to the left. And compare it to, in Bavaria, you have the CSU, which is the Bavarian branch of the CDU, which historically was more conservative than much of the rest of the CDU, particularly the CDU in the rest of Western Germany. As recently as 2019, when we had the last EU elections, the media and the left-wing activist groups, well, they were still calling the CSU a far-right party. And so, I mean, some people in the CDU were no different than the AfD 10 years ago. It's not a radical party. It's complete propaganda to call them radical far right. But so what's happening is the CDU is still the largest political party in Germany. And they're mobilizing vast state resources to suppress the second most popular party, their conservative competition, the AfD. And they are now engaged in taxpayer-funded nationwide surveillance of AfD members. And there was big court battles. The courts ruled that the CDU can spy on them. I mean, they're completely suspending democracy. And so their members are being spied on. They're being targeted for politically motivated prosecution and lawfare. It's total intimidation. And then you've got all this taxpayer-funded media in Germany that the CDU has a lot of control over, and they're just pumping out daily, day after day, relentless, nonstop propaganda demonizing the AfD. Now, there's an idea that a lot of people have that people voting for the AfD must be, you know, people who used to vote for the CDU and have left the CDU. Well, I've done a bunch of videos in the past about state elections in former East German states where the AfD did very well. The German magazine Der Spiegel has published these really nice graphics showing where their voters came from. And over again, there would always be a huge chunk of people who voted AfD who had just voted for the first time in their life. They had never voted in a previous state election. They were either too young or they were old enough to vote but just didn't bother. And then you'd have some people who previously voted CDU, but you'd also have large numbers that voted for all the different left-wing parties. Now, Austria is a much different situation. You've got the Freiheitliche Party Österreichs, the Austrian Freedom Party, and they've been around for decades. Now, for a long time, they were just a really tiny party, and then they had a leader, Jörg Haider, who became super popular. He became the governor of Carinthia, and in 1999, they got about 27% in the national Austrian election and became part of the ruling coalition. The media went completely bonkers and said that it was a far-right takeover of Austria, and there was even people calling for Austria to be sanctioned by the EU or even kicked out of the EU for being too radical. And although in the years that followed, the party kind of fell apart, and then there's been huge ups and downs, and then they got really big in 2017, and then there's the Ibiza affair, which I have a whole video about, and then Sebastian Kurz, this globalist wanker who was in charge of the Austrian People's Party, the guy that the globalist media was calling the Wunderkind. Well, he declared that his party would never coalition with him ever again. Well, now he was forced out of his own party in disgrace, and the Austrian Freedom Party is straight back to the top. And they came in first place. Now, the Austrian media is now claiming to have official final results. The official final results are not as good as the exit polls. There was 3 exit polls showing the Austrian Freedom Party in first place by really big margins. Now the official results show almost a 3-way tie between the top 3 parties, but the Austrian Freedom Party is still in first place. The Österreich's Folk Party, or Austrian People's Party, so that's the establishment center-right party. So these 2 parties jointly got a majority. Now, and here's the thing. Austria is going to have their next general election this fall. The date has not been set yet, but it's coming up soon. It's very likely that in the Austrian general election this fall, the Austrian Freedom Party will come in first place. The People's Party will then have to choose whether to coalition with them or form another coalition with the left wing like Kurz did, which is going to anger a lot of their own voters. Well, as I said, in Germany, the strategy of the CDU is to demonize and persecute, intimidate the AfD. The situation is far different in Austria because the Freedom Party has been around so long. And they've been a major party for over 25 years now. And there's a long history of a huge swing vote that can go either way. And so whenever the popularity of the Freedom Party goes way up, the People's Party goes way down, and suddenly the People's Party decides that once again they need to take a hard line on immigration in order to stop the bleeding. So it's a completely different dynamic between these two parties compared to the CDU and the AFD, where the CDU has just gone totally nuclear, and you have Angela Merkel calling for members of her own party to be expelled just for collaborating with any AFD members. So we could very well see the Austrian Freedom Party back in power in Austria by the end of the year, or at the very least, the People's Party will have to make major concessions on immigration in order to stop the bleeding so they don't lose more support. So I anticipate before this election, the People's Party is going to start perpetrating that they're really hardcore on immigration. All right, there's a lot of other countries to talk about. Hungary, Slovakia, Czech Republic, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Ireland. I'm going to have more videos over the next few days. Click the like button, post a comment below, tell me what you think about Germany and Austria, and click the subscribe button. New video every few days.